Jameer Nelson went from too short and small to play at Power 5 schools to carving out one of the best college careers of all time, leading into a successful NBA career that would see him become an all-star on a competitive Orlando Magic team. This is a look back on Jameer Nelson's career. Jameer Nelson would go to high school in Chester, Pennsylvania at Chester High School, and in 2000 he helped his team all the way to the state championship in the PIAA 4A state champs. However, he was not highly recruited in large part due to his lack of size, but what he lacked in size he would make up for in speed and always finding his spot. Jameer Nelson would decide to stay close to home and go to St. Joseph's University and play for Phil Martelli. He would make waves his freshman year, instantly starting for St. Joe's. Jameer would average 12.5 points, 6.5 assists, 4 rebounds, and 1.7 steals, and this was all good enough to earn him an All-Atlantic second team his freshman year, on top of being A-10's Freshman of the Year. Despite being just a freshman, he was already the second option on St. Joe's offense, the main being Marvin O'Connor. Now, Nelson and O'Connor would lead St. Joe's to an A-10 regular season championship on a team that went 26-7, earning a place in the NCAA tournament as a 9 seed. In round 1, St. Joe's would play against Georgia Tech and would narrowly escape with a victory 66-62. Now, Jameer would shine in an all-around performance, putting up 13 points, 8 assists, and 7 rebounds. With the victory, St. Joe's earned a matchup against the number 1 seeded Stanford, led by the Collins brothers and Casey Jacobson, who all went on to play in the NBA. St. Joe's put up a fight with Jameer, putting up another good performance just shy of a triple-double with 14 points, 9 assists, 9 rebounds, and 3 steals to go along with that, while Marvin O'Connor scored 37. But it wasn't enough with the struggling to match up with Stanford's bigs. Jameer's sophomore season would see growth, but not the jump most were expecting. Jameer would average 14.4 points, 4.8 rebounds, 6.3 assists, and 1.3 steals, making another All-A10 team. Now, St. Joe's would have another good regular season, being A10 regular season champs. However, they would not make the NCAA tournament after losing in the conference tournament and not having a strong out-of-conference record. Every starter besides Jameer would graduate, providing a hurdle, making him the focal point on the team now. Jameer knew this, putting in extra work in the offseason, truly committing to the game of basketball. His junior year would show his efforts would pay off. Jameer would average 19.7 points, 5.1 rebounds, 4.7 assists, and 2.2 steals, earning honorable AP All-American. He did this while also helping keep St. Joe's atop the conference, with help from emerging sophomore and fellow NBA player Delonte West. St. Joe's again would be regular season champs, earning themselves a spot in the NCAA tournament as a 7 seed. They would face an Auburn-led team by NBA player Marquise Daniels. Jameer would absolutely go off in this game, scoring 32 points while grabbing 9 rebounds. This, however, wasn't enough to put St. Joe's over the top, as Auburn would win in a tight one after Marquise Daniels hit a late basket with 45 seconds left to give them the lead, resulting in a 65-63 victory for Auburn. Jameer would test the waters after this successful season for the NBA draft, but would ultimately decide to return for his senior season. Now, Jameer's senior season would see him and the school transcend to never-before-seen heights. Jameer would lead the team with 20.6 points, 4.7 rebounds, and 5.3 assists this season. For a St. Joe's team that would go undefeated. Yes, St. Joe's went undefeated with quality wins this season over quality teams, with the best backcourt in the country, with Jameer and Delonte West leading the way, making them instant must-watch TV. Jameer even was on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Jameer Nelson would win every accolade imaginable this season, like Player of the Year for the Naismith and Wooden Awards, and henceforth an All-American as well. Jameer was considered by all to be the best player in the country on the best team in the country. In the postseason, St. Joe's would finally pick up their first loss to Xavier in the conference tournament. This, however, still did not affect their seeding a bunch, still earning a number 1 seed, but landing some critics because of the weaker schedule due to the strength of schedule of most. Jameer would lead the team in scoring in the first 3 victories in the tournament, providing St. Joe's their deserved ranking and earning a spot into the Elite 8, where they would go up against an Oklahoma State team with 5 future NBA players led by Tony Allen and John Lucas. Jameer would struggle more this game, though, to no surprise, especially when 6-time All-NBA defender and Tony Allen is on the other team. But struggling for Nelson was still good at 17 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, and 4 steals this game. Now, this game was close down the stretch when John Lucas would hit a 3 with only a couple seconds left, providing the win for Oklahoma State in an all-time classic game. Jameer Nelson's college career was officially over, but he would go down as one of the best players in school history, if not the best, and Jameer is the all-time leading scorer at this school with 2,094 points, the all-time leader in assists at 714, and the all-time leaders in steals with 256 for St. Joe's. Jameer Nelson would go on to get drafted by the Denver Nuggets in the first round with the 20th pick of the 2004 NBA draft. And then he would be traded by the Nuggets on draft night to the Orlando Magic for a 2005 first-round draft pick that would later go on to be Julius Hodge. Many people had him going in the lottery, and slipping to the Magic's hands was an absolute surprise to many. This would give Orlando a two team-altering rookies in Jameer Nelson and the first overall pick of the draft in Dwight Howard. Jameer Nelson and Dwight Howard would be joining an Orlando team led by Steve Francis and Grant Hill, and as a rookie, Nelson would serve as a primary backup to the former All-Star and Steve Francis. But Nelson would impress during his rookie season, earning more time as the season went along, even starting in 21 games. Now, Jameer would average 8.7 points and 3 assists, earning himself a second-team All-Rookie his rookie season. The Magic would end up going 36-46 this season, but the young core seemed strong with Howard and Nelson leading the way. The next season, people expected the Magic to take a jump, but injuries sidelined Grant Hill for most of the year, causing the team to take a pivot mid-season, realizing they were going to miss the playoffs again. Now, the Magic would decide to trade Francis to the New York Knicks, paving the way for Nelson to be the long-term starting point guard for the Orlando Magic. Now, Jameer's averages would jump up to 14.6 points and 4.9 assists. Next year, the Orlando Magic would improve upon the momentum of the end of last season with the return of healthy Grant Hill and the team officially becoming Dwight Howard's. Orlando would go 40-42, making the playoffs. Jameer would be a key part of this push, averaging 13 points, 4.3 assists, and 3.1 rebounds, while being the team's full-time starting point guard. The playoffs would not go well for the Magic, however, though, in the first round, with a sweep to the number 1 seeded Detroit Pistons, who simply have had more playoff experience at the time. Now, Jameer would still average 14.3 points this series, while providing 3 assists a game. The Magic next season would take another big jump, in large part due to the offseason moves of adding Rashard Lewis and new head coach Stan Van Gundy. Jameer's scoring would drop slightly with the addition of Rashard Lewis and the continued growth of Hedo Turkoglu, making him the 4th scoring option in the lineup. Jameer would average 10.9 points, but an increase in assists to 5.6. Jameer Nelson would also play a part in the Dwight Howard becoming a household name this All-Star weekend, assisting on several of his dunks for the dunk contest, but most importantly, his Superman dunk that would win him the slam dunk contest. Orlando would finish the season 52-30, earning a 3 seed in the playoffs. They would take down the Toronto Raptors and Chris Bosh in round 1 rather quickly in 5 before facing the Pistons in round 2. For the second straight season in a row, the Detroit Pistons would send Jameer and the Orlando Magic packing. Next season, Orlando would take a leap forward in large part due to the four-headed monster Orlando had formed in Turkoglu, Lewis, Howard, and Nelson. By the time All-Star break came around, Orlando was cooking, with Jameer earning a place in the All-Star game with his teammates Dwight Howard and Rashard Lewis, with averages of 16.7 points, 5.4 assists, and 3.5 rebounds. However, Jameer would miss the All-Star game with a torn labrum in his right shoulder, and Jameer Nelson would also miss the next 4 months of basketball, only to rejoin the team late in the postseason, where Orlando Magic had been hot at the right time, winning over the 76ers in round 1, before facing Boston and winning in 7, setting up an Eastern Conference final matchup against the LeBron James-led Cavaliers. Everyone thought the Cavaliers would beat the Magic, with even the commercials highlighting a potential LeBron and Kobe finals. Despite LeBron averaging 38.5 this series, Orlando would win in 6 games, in large part due to Orlando being a more well-rounded team and Dwight Howard doing it all for the Magic. This would set up a finals matchup against the Lakers and Magic. Jameer Nelson would return for the NBA Finals, and it's a controversial decision by Stan Van Gundy for allowing him to play heavy minutes by limiting Rafer Alston's playing time, where it was shown Nelson wasn't fully back and ready to be playing, maybe messing up the chemistry of the Orlando Magic had going on throughout their miraculous postseason run so far. The Magic would end up losing in 5 games to Kobe and Pau Gasol-led Lakers team. In 5 games he played in the postseason, Jameer would only average 3.8 points, 2.8 assists, while playing 18 minutes a night off the bench during the finals. The Orlando Magic would look different this next year, with Vince Carter replacing Hedo Turkoglu as the 3rd option, but this team was still effective in the regular season, where Orlando would earn a 2 seed this year, going 59-23. Jameer's averages, however, would drop this year after his all-star season prior, going down to 12.6 points and 5.4 assists, but this was maybe in part due to him missing games due to a torn meniscus. Come playoffs this time, though, Jameer was fully healthy and ready to help Orlando make a playoff run this time. The Orlando Magic would sweep the Bobcats and the Hawks in round 1 and 2 this year, setting up a meeting with the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals, where Boston would get the better of Orlando in 6 games. Now, Jameer, this postseason run to the Eastern Conference Finals, would average 19 points and 4.8 assists, being Orlando's leading scorer this playoffs over Dwight Howard. Now, the next season for Orlando, things unfortunately began to fall apart. A trade during the season that sent Rashard Lewis to Washington in exchange for Gilbert Arenas sparked the downfall of the Magic's chemistry. Nelson considered Lewis to be one of the team's leader, while Dwight Howard, on the opposite hand, reportedly pushed management into making the trade, and the team was very split on both sides of the move. However, things seemed to still be afloat for now for Orlando. Jameer Nelson's highlight of the season would be a game-winning buzzer beater against the Denver Nuggets to secure an 85-82 victory for Orlando this season. He would also continue to average 13.1 points and 6 assists this season, and Orlando would go 52-30, earning a spot in the playoffs as a 4 seed. This would earn them a first-round matchup against the Atlanta Hawks. The Magic would lose in 6 games this series because of Atlanta's ability to have multiple people generate offense, where Orlando solely relied on Dwight Howard and Jameer Nelson for this series. Jameer would be second on the team in scoring in the postseason this series with 13.2 points and leading it with 5 assists per game. The following year would provide more turmoil for the team, as the relationship between Dwight Howard and Jameer Nelson was further strained when Howard publicly stated his desire to play with a superstar point guard like Deron Williams or Chris Paul. While Dwight Howard also seeming to demand a trade, yet sign an extension, confusing the locker room, with them not being sure if he was committed to playing in Orlando or not. Jameer would still play solidly this next season, averaging 11.9 points and 5.7 assists. But Orlando would continue to fall, only managing to get a 6th seed this time, earning a matchup against the Pacers in round 1, where the Pacers would absolutely handle the Magic rather easily in 5 games. In the offseason, Dwight Howard was reportedly the driving force behind the firing of then-coach Stan Van Gundy for the Magic, in large part due to the decrease in the past couple of seasons and the drift between the team and the players. Howard eventually forced a trade to the Lakers this offseason as well, altering the makeup and the trajectory of the Magic. Despite this, Nelson would re-sign with the Magic as a free agent this offseason on a deal worth 3 years, $25 million. The Orlando Magic would struggle significantly, going only 20-62 this season, with the roster almost looking completely different than the years prior. Jameer would continue to play solid for the team as the starting point guard, averaging 14.7 points and 7.4 assists. The next year would also be more of the same for Orlando, with them only going 23-59. However, there was a high for the season in Jameer personally on February 23, 2014, when Nelson would score his 8,020th point, passing Shaquille O'Neal for 4th all-time on the Magic scoring list. Jameer would still play well this season despite team success, scoring 12.1 points a night and 7 assists. In the offseason, Jameer would be waived by the Magic after playing 10 seasons with the team. This was in large part due to him not fitting the rest of the team's younger timeline, in particular freeing up space for playing time for first-round pick Elfrid Payton. After being waived, Nelson would go on to sign a 2-year deal worth $5.6 million with the Dallas Mavericks, where Nelson would play and start in 23 games, averaging 7.3 points and 4.1 assists. However, he would be traded by the Dallas Mavericks with Jay Crawford and Brandon Wright in a 2016 first-round pick that would go on to be Gershon Yabusele, and a 2016 second-round pick that would be Demetrius Jackson to the Boston Celtics for Dwight Powell and Rajon Rondo, giving a disgruntled Rondo a new home in Dallas. Jameer's stop in Boston would even be shorter this season, playing in 6 games, averaging 4.8 points and 5.5 assists. Jameer Nelson would be traded to the Denver Nuggets in exchange for Nate Robinson in order to dump salary by Boston. Jameer would play in the remaining 34 games of the season with Denver, while increasing his scoring back up to 9.6 points and 3.7 assists, playing the backup point guard for the first time in his career for Denver. This would be on a Denver Nugget team struggling, going 30-52. Showing solid play at the end of the season, Denver would sign him to a 3-year, $13.6 million contract. Now, Jameer would struggle to stay healthy next season, though, only playing in 39 games for Denver, where he would average 7.7 points, 4.9 assists on a Denver team that would ultimately go 33-49, missing the playoffs. Jameer Nelson would be healthy next season for Denver, playing in 75 of the 82 games, where he would average 9.2 points and 5.1 assists. Denver was improving along with its young core, just missing the playoffs, going 40-42. However, Jameer Nelson would be waived just before the start of next season, yet again to clear room for the play of younger guys in Jamal Murray and Emmanuel Mudiay. All the meanwhile, he was showing signs of aging. A couple days later, Nelson would sign with the New Orleans Pelicans on a 1-year deal worth $1.38 million. Jameer would play in 43 games with the Pelicans as a backup point guard, averaging 5.1 points a night and 3.6 assists. Jameer, however, yet again would be used as a trade chip to balance contracts in a deal. He would be traded by the New Orleans Pelicans with Tony Allen, Amir Ashik, and a 2018 first-round pick that would go on to be Chandler Hutchinson to the Chicago Bulls for Nikola Mirotic, and a 2018 second-round pick that would go on to be Tony Carr, where he would quickly be dealt again from Chicago in another deal, where he'd be traded with a 2022 second-round pick that would go on to be Isaiah Mobley later on to the Detroit Pistons for Willie Reed, and a 2022 second-round draft pick that would go on to be Christian Koloko. After all the trades, he was in Detroit, reunited with his former head coach in Orlando and Stan Van Gundy, who traded for him in particular. Jameer, however, could not find former success he once had in Detroit, playing in 7 games, averaging 3.7 points and 3.3 assists for the Detroit Pistons, thus ending his NBA career after 14 years in the league at the age of 35 years. Jameer would end his career with averages of 11.3 points, 5.1 assists, and 3 rebounds. After his basketball playing days, he would still decide to stick around in basketball, with the Delaware Bluecoats in particular of the NBA G League as the assistant general manager, with rumors swirling recently of him potentially being promoted soon. In the end, Jameer Nelson was one of college basketball's most exciting players of all time after being under-recruited and helping push St. Joe's into the spotlight with a perfect regular season, while recording and earning himself a National Player of the Year. And continued the success in the NBA despite his small size. He would make up for it in speed and decision-making, earning an all-star appearance and helping turn the Orlando Magic around into a playoff competitor, forever becoming tied to the team. Thank you again for watching this video on Jameer Nelson and his career. If you want to see any future players with videos done on them, please comment it down below. And in the meantime, have a good one, and thanks for watching. This has been Skid Denver.